Happy Wednesday, everybody. Let's have a quick chit chat about collaborative works. Collaborative works are something that I've been thinking about a good deal. It's basically when you get a bunch of authors or writers or aspiring folks together and you all want to tell stories together so that you can boost each other. It's a great idea. Management and execution can be a little bit difficult. When you're in that situation, you have to count for and manage the project. There's positives and negatives to the process. Somebody has to run points. Somebody has to call everybody's, email everybody, pull the collective works in together. And that person is the manager for the whole process. And then what will end up happening is if that manager for your process is the one who's in charge of the collaborative work, you become indebted. You become beholden to manage the payments. Now all of a sudden, you're stuck sending money to people year after year if you're not careful with your contract. This is something I've thought about a couple times because there's a couple really cool authors that I've been following. I like their work. I've considered asking if they want to work on something at some point in the future. I'm physically too busy to manage the process right now. I've got too many other plates spinning that are critical to long-term success. For me, creating a collaborative work is more of a 300 or 400 meter target at this point. It's something that's popping in my head more and more frequently as I get closer to going 70, 80% full tilt effort onto content creation. If we're smart, we can manage some of those risks, some of those personality risks, some of the payment risks. One of the things I've been thinking about is, do we pay a flat rate for a story? Do we pay a percentage of based on how many words go into the book? And then how do you manage that? If you have one really big name author who anchors the whole book, the whole anthology, how do you compensate that author when they have 1 million people reading their stuff and the 4 other schlubs that we've got tied into the process only have maybe 10,000 books together combined? Whose book is it? If everybody writes the same 20,000 words and you've got 5 authors, one of them sells 1 million books a year and everybody else sells a grand total of 10,000, how do you allocate that? Who's the most popular author? Because if you try to pay that person who's selling 1 million books a year when everybody else is selling maybe 2,000, what are you going to do? Pay that person 50 times what everybody else makes? When you're balancing those plates, you're going to have all that in your head as an understood before you start. As I look at the possibility of doing anthologies, combined works, compilation works, and such like that, thinking that it might be best to work with a team of unknowns. As soon as you bring in the heavy hitter, that person who's slinging the 1 million books a year, as soon as that heavy hitter gets in there, everybody else is working for free advertising. Everybody else is effectively working for free because their work is going to be published alongside of that 1 million book a year author. As a consideration for doing this, we have to come in with our eyes open in the process. If it takes you a week's worth of labor to put this thing together and you make 3 cents out of it, is that really worth your time? If this story becomes a cross promotion for somebody else's work, is that worth it for me in the long term strategically? So asking myself, is the time that I'm investing in this work worth the investment of my time? If I figure my time is worth $20 an hour and I put 40 hours into this thing, if your investment in this process is $800, and you consider that from the start as an $800 investment in your advertising and promotion, that makes sense. Now all of a sudden you don't feel bad about paying that 1 million book a year author because your name is headlined next to them or sub-headline. I think effectively the 2 best ways to do it would be for the lower sellers to go in understanding that this is an investment in their self-promotion by combining their efforts with a more senior author, or working together as a group of unknowns and everybody advertises the combined book across all their social media platforms. And then instead of having 50 people who respond to my social media, it might be 50 people times 5 who respond to the various related works in the series or the compilation. Final thing that we would have to work through would be, how do we set the subject matter for the work? If I'm writing about science fiction and the next guy is writing about high fantasy and the next girl is writing furry erotica or whatever, now all of a sudden you've got a book that covers so many different genres it's going to become difficult to market. I think that we're going to have compilations of related material and then either do the senior author and then 4 or 5 supporting authors, or do 5 unknowns kind of thing. And then the 5 unknowns work together to promote the combined book. Hey, check out my new book with my 4 or 5 best friends in the world. I suspect that would be the best way to do a compilation work. If everybody's putting together a 20 to 25,000 word short story and you've got 5 authors total, that pretty much puts you between 100 and 125,000 words. You got a decent sized book. I suspect that I'm overthinking this. When I'm working on the compilation in the future, I'll probably start out working with a few unknown authors, and then I would be able to put together an anthology with somebody who's pretty darn good, and then eventually become that person who's pretty darn good. I suspect that it might be fun to put together anthologies with a bunch of related authors and be the anchor. I think that would be a fun way to pay it forward, pay it backward kind of thing. If we turn around and we have a good audience, and that audience can help out 4 new authors, that might be really cool. This is like just something that popped in my head in the last few weeks. I'm not sure that compilations is the way to go, but I think that those 2 main ways of doing it are probably the best. I think if you get a bunch of authors who are really selling a crapload of books, I think you're going to end up with ego issues. You're going to end up with payment and compensation issues, because I sell 1 million books. You only sell 100,000 books. I need to get paid $5 million as opposed to your 50. That might be an extreme example, but I suspect it's probably pretty close to wargaming through what could be a worst case scenario. Compilations could be fun. They could also be a headache if we don't manage them right. Something to think about, I suppose. Have a great morning. Enjoy your wind.